Quiet quitting, the term popularised over the last few years for individuals who are working but maybe doing the bare minimum to get by through various reasons, stress related, lack of motivation, lack of career prospects. In this particular episode, we sit down with neurointegration expert Svetlana to focus on one, what we mean when we talk about quiet quitting and neurointegration. And then second to that, we also focus on how we as businesses can spot specific signs that we're negatively impacting the mental health of our employees, and then also what steps we can take, call it the blueprint as it were, to actually start making changes here. Here's a little bit about what we've got coming up in this episode.
So nowadays we have a lot of research on how our brain works and how the burnout happens. And I think it would be stupid from the employer side not to use this knowledge nowadays. And we need to accept that now mental health is important. And there is this term, and we live in this society which pays attention to the mental health as well. And by applying this knowledge, employers can actually prevent the burnout of their employees, prevent the quiet quitting, and make their employees more successful, more engaged, and more motivated. So basically, the neurointegration offers companies and individuals a complex framework to manage the chronic stress and to prevent the employee burnout. It is based on neurobiological research and helps people keep the physical and mental state in the optimal environment, so to say. And then it also helps you to be more focused, more engaged, enjoy life in general, and it provides you with tools.
This is a genuine episode that I'm thrilled to be part of. I had no idea what neurointegration was, to be honest with you, but speaking to Svetlana, seeing the kind of mix of neuroscience, cognitive behavioral science, agile, and how we can bring this into the workplace, I know for a fact it's going to be able to make a strong difference in many, many organizations. So hopefully you enjoy it just as much as I did when I recorded, and we'll see you on the next episode. Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a certified neurointegration trainer and experienced people partner with a genuine passion for unlocking people's potential. By using a neuroscientific approach, she's able to uncover the root cause of workplace challenges such as disengagement and procrastination. And through addressing these issues, she empowers leaders to create environments where their teams can thrive, innovate, and achieve their highest potentials. Having personally worked with her during one of the most challenging, but arguably the most rewarding recruitment projects I've ever been part of in the last decade, I am genuinely so thrilled that she joined me on this podcast today. We're going to discuss things around quiet quitting, neurointegration, and mental health in the workplace. This individual is not just a fantastic people and culture partner, but a genuine friend as well. So please, when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcome neurointegration expert and senior people partner, Svetlana. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Eden. Thank you very much for the introduction. Very happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
No, I appreciate it. And look, there's a lot to kind of cover around quiet quitting, neurointegration. I want to kind of really focus on what that is, because before we kind of discuss this, it was very, very, very new to me. So I imagine a lot of people might listen to that word and go, hang about. But before we go into that, I always like to kick off episodes with more kind of like a teaser, just a warm-up, shall we say. So the topic of choice for this season is around artificial intelligence, and specifically where you feel, does AI have or haven't, or sorry, does AI or does it not have a place inside the talent acquisition, the people culture teams? Do you see it being part of our future stack?
Well, to be honest, I think it could be part of the talent acquisition teams, helping us to search for the people and for the skills, because in the first part, it's always like just a skill matches, right? But when it comes to like people interaction, I still believe that AI is far away from real human interaction and emotions, although the new version of ChatGPT can do this. Anyways, I still strongly believe it's far away and hope so, to be honest.
Well, I was going to say, do you think it would get to the point where, somebody in your kind of role in that people and culture side of things, where you could integrate it somewhere into the role? Or do you feel like it's, we're too far away from that happening?
Well, maybe not too far away, but at least for that moment, for now, I think it's not possible.
Okay. I mean, I think I agree, by the way, in terms of the TA function. I think there is a place to some degree, but the moment it becomes a people-focused element where we have to interact, we have to engage with somebody person to person, I personally don't want to be interviewed by an AI. I find it a bit peculiar, or having my face plastered on it, I find it a bit weird. But moving on to the core topic, so quiet quitting, neurointegration. Let's start with quiet quitting. It's a topic that I think has kind of gained momentum in terms of its phrasing and the meaning behind it. I would say really from when I see it was kind of 2019, 2020, and it was the COVID situation. That's where it kind of, for me, started really popping up on social media and started popping up into, how people's vocabulary about what they were doing. But for those who aren't aware, what is quiet quitting? What are we actually talking about?
Yeah, so as you said, I think I also believe it started during the COVID area when people were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do, and they were put under a lot of pressure and stress with this unknown and uncertainty. Yeah. And so basically quiet quitting is when people just physically stay in their job, but mentally they just check out and they just do the bare minimum of what's required of them, not to get fired. And they are not that enthusiastic anymore. They don't engage in what they are doing. They also don't want to go extra mile for their roles. Just put it simply, I think it's losing the spark within the person when you feel this empowered to do something more than just expected from you.
And what do you think the drivers were that kind of led people, or drivers are that lead people even today, to kind of go down that route of quiet quitting?
Yeah, so it's, again, stress and uncertainty as a first factor. And then when we're talking about the working environment and the companies, this is, for example, again, I hope that is not the case anymore, but it's toxic environments, right? And then when people feel disrespectful with in their roles, or micromanaged, this is also a great factor. When there is no opportunity for the advancement in their career, and then you just start doing this routine work over and over again, and this becomes boring, and you try to talk to your manager, but they don't listen to you, for example, and don't take any action. Also, one of the main drivers for me is lack of recognition. So because it's so obvious for the employers that people need to achieve something, but they just don't notice it. And also when we're talking about COVID and the remote work, then it's also the work-life balance. The borders now between work and life are very vague, and people are... That's sometimes just not possible to close your laptop and then suddenly you are in another environment. So that since this balance is not there anymore, there are a lot of over hours and extra work. So this is also one of the main drivers.
I mean, I don't think I fell into the category of quiet quitting in the traditional sense, because during that period of time I was transitioning into setting up prioritise, so I was focused elsewhere. So I might have been doing less in my former role because my mind was focused elsewhere. But that aspect of, and I fell deeply into the trap of kind of going through the motions of not being able to switch off. That was awful for me. I could not turn that laptop off. And I suffer. I think I suffer with that a lot more now than maybe I did then. But the ease of having the laptop at home, open it up, check emails, closing it, someone responds, go have a conversation with them, and that I've really struggled with, and I see that was a big issue with a lot of people, and I think that kind of then led to the stress components, as you said, and that's when they're thinking, okay, well, I'm not being recognised, I'm not seeing this, so why would I put the effort in? How can we actually, as employers, then, in your perception, prevent this? Because it's all well and good saying we hope there's no toxic environment, but there 100% is. We can all say we hope our managers are recognising us, but we know they're not 100% aren't. So what's the element that employers can actually do?
So nowadays we have a lot of research on how our brain works and how the burnout happens. And I think it would be stupid from the employer side not to use this knowledge nowadays. And we need to accept that now mental health is important. And there is this term, and we live in this society which pays attention to the mental health as well. And by applying this knowledge, employers can actually prevent the burnout of their employees, prevent the quiet quitting, and make their employees more successful, more engaged, and more motivated. There are different tools available right now, which the employers can use, as, for example, neurointegration. Mm-hmm. And this is really a set of tools which you can implement in the workplace for your employees to be more successful.
Okay, so neurointegration is a brand new term to me, and I know you just kind of gave a brief explanation, but just peel it back, make it its own thing, as it were. When you say you're a neurointegration expert, what does that mean? Like, give us the basic nutshell. I know it's difficult when there's so many avenues, but what is it?
I'll try. So to be honest, for me, that was also a very new term. And at first I was very skeptical when I saw this Neurointegration Trainer. I was like, what is it again? Like esoteric stuff or something? But then when I dig a little deeper, that turned out to be a completely different thing. So basically the neurointegration offers companies and individuals a complex framework to manage the chronic stress and to prevent the employee burnout. It is based on neurobiological research and helps people keep the physical and mental state in the optimal environment, so to say. And then it also helps you to be more focused, more engaged, enjoy life in general, and it provides you with tools to train actually your brain to become more stress resistant and keep your mental energy on the optimal level for the performance, right? Then, for example, there is also this neurobalance concept, like inside the neurointegration, which describes how our brain functions depend on the state the brain is in. So basically there are three main states. So there is this integration state when our brain functions on its best. It is calm, it can perform, it can also take rational decisions, think clearly, and then there is the second state, which is the distress state. This is when we experience this prolonged stress and uncertainty, for example, in the external environment. And then when we put in this kind of the conditions, then our nervous system just becomes hypersensitive to all the stimulus, and we feel overwhelmed with everything what is going on. And after being in this state for quite some time, then we go to the burnout state. So this is the third state, so to say. And the burnout, I hope that people who watch our podcast haven't experienced this. But if they are, so probably people know what it is. Like, you lose the mental energy. There is no motivation. There is no ability to think clearly. You just want to lay in bed and do nothing, and you want everybody to leave you alone. And when people are in this condition, in this state, they are 260% more likely to quit their jobs, because
Really?
then this is the easiest way to change something, and they're just, so I just quit.
Which obviously, one, we don't want to have happen, clearly, right? We don't want to get people to the burnout stage, but obviously the impact of the business is if we're not paying attention to these three elements, these three stages, and if we've got somebody who's on the cusp of getting to a burnout, we're 260% more time likely going to lose them, which means then we've got to replace them, which might add more stress into the wider team, which more stress into the talent team, and the cycles continue.
Absolutely.
So I imagine a traditional makeup of a company, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this from maybe what you know. I imagine we might have a small handful that are in stage one, right, that are optimal. I imagine the vast majority are probably in stage two. And especially if you're working in a tech startup or a tech organization in the last 3 years and have been a part of any layoff process or uncertainty. Of course, this can go into any industry, but that's where I sit at the moment, and that's where you've sat before as well. So I imagine that's where we probably get a lot of people. So, people probably are edging. Does it have like a scale of where you fall into that category? People might be more closer to this way, more closer to that way.
Yes. So actually, the three states which I described, they are the generalization, but right. Inside the stages there are more scales. So which you can actually see, like, am I completely burned out, or can I still do something to make it work and be more onto the integral zone? And then the integration zone that also has three subcategories, so to say.
It's interesting because I think a lot of TAs or a lot of organizations in general, right, would look at somebody and say, you're burnt out, you're not burnt out. And it's kind of like black and white almost. Yeah. But by having like this neurointegration component and an expert like yourself going through an org with you and sitting down and saying, okay, actually, this is how the makeup of your business actually looks. And this is maybe where you might be having performance issues. So if you've got a underperforming sales team, but you've got a lot of them on a higher end of stage 2 to stage 3, well, there you go. Now you need to be focusing on how do we bring that down, so to speak. So it all kind of interlinks.
Absolutely.
So obviously this all circulates around mental health in general, right? And you are absolutely right. I think when I first started in recruitment, mental health wasn't a thing.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I mean, 10 years ago it wasn't. And then it just all of a sudden popped up for right reasons. I think, it's more people should be talking about this. And it, I think largely companies know, yes, there will be negative impact by having a culture that's, got a larger population of people with a low negative mental health at the moment versus one positive. But what I guess are the critical factors that impact the business if, a team is, high on mental health versus low on mental health?
Yeah, so first of all, as I said, so if there is there is a team which most of which is burned out, then the people are more likely to quit. And then the stress and burnout are serious problems for business to increase the turnover. Imagine, I think I will be repeating yourself, imagine you hired a person, you invested in a recruitment process. Recruiter also spent a lot of time hiring managers, interviewed a lot of people, and then you finally have chosen the one. Then you also invested into the onboarding this person and bring them up to speed. And then after 9 to 12 months, they experienced the burnout and they decided to quit. And then you start the process all over again. And it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of time rather than just keep an eye on this person and everybody in general in the company. Yeah. And then it brings you benefits in the long run.
I think I'm going to paraphrase him. So I met my previous recruitment trainer at an event. It's back here a couple of months ago. A guy called Alan Clark, brilliant trainer. He trained me, so I take great pride in that. And when I was having a conversation with him, we was talking about training in general, and I put kind of your aspect. It covers under training. Yes, it's a certain element towards the mental well-being of an organization, but it's still training components as well, right? So you still have to upskill leaders, upskill businesses. But he basically shared to me that training in general, or the investment into training, is usually cut first in most organizations. And it blows my mind because obviously when you're struggling as a business, for example, let's say your sales department is struggling, or I don't know, your tech team haven't got the required skills for a certain tool, it makes sense to me to go and invest in upskilling there to improve when things are lower. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but it will be better in the long run. So from your side, I think you shared the same kind of opinion about where organizations aren't necessarily investing into employee mental health. So why do you believe there's maybe this skepticism about why we should invest into this area or not?
Yeah, so just a couple of words to your example. So it's just popped up in my mind. For example, when you have a flat tire on your car, but you want to continue the journey, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like, you need to replace this tire to go further, right? So this is pretty much the same with the employees. The skepticism, I think, it's just because it's something new. And as I mentioned, so people just are like, okay, we didn't have any mental health before and everything was all right. Like, why should we now start investing in this? And then I think it's also a little vague value. There is like no data and the value is delayed. And this is not that you can, like, you start to invest in mental health and then tomorrow suddenly everybody is going out of the burnout. It is a process. And in the long run, you will obviously see the value. For example, in our training, we offer this data as well, like the visuals, where people take mental health tests every 3 to 4 weeks. And also we measure the stress level that they had in the last year. So this is important because some stress could influence you, like even if it happened a year before, it could still influence your mental health nowadays. So, and then we compare the dynamics with the tools that we use. So we provide people with these tools. We train them how to be more stress resistant, how to come out of this burnout state, how to maintain the integral zone. And then we just compare it with tests, and people can actually see the dynamics. And from my experience, what I had right now, for example, I had one client with I think he was like 80% in the burnout zone. And after 3 weeks of this training, it reduced by 50%. So, and it was just only 30. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. And I think coming into aspects of businesses, and I guess maybe not wanting to invest, I see it speaking to C-suite and more founders than those that have been brought in at a different stage. I think it's also kind of a hard pill to swallow.
Absolutely.
Your company has a cultural issue, let's call it what it is, where it's impacting negatively towards the mental health of your employees. And that is a cultural thing. And I've seen it firsthand where it's difficult. You can see almost faces drop in the founders where they sit there and go, didn't realize, or they bury their head in the sand and say, no, that's completely untrue. And that's, as you say, because mental health hasn't been a huge talking point maybe when they first founded the company versus where we are today, but it's something that is there. It's just no one's really said much. For those, I guess, who are maybe in the talent team or HR department or people and culture, which is obviously the listeners of this, what are maybe some of the signs that might indicate that the wider organization is negatively impacting mental health? Because they probably only have kind of a small slither. They might not be feeling it themselves. They also might be. But what can they kind of see or look out for to say, okay, we might have something a little bit more sinister here that we need to investigate further?
So when we're talking about quiet quitting, for example, I think the first red flag is when people stop speaking up in meetings, for example, unless they are directly addressed to. And then the second big red flag is when people start taking sick leaves more often than usual. So they just really don't want to engage anymore. So, and if you compare a high performer who suddenly started to take more sick leaves, I don't want to say you need to become suspicious, but you really need to pay attention to it, because that might be a sign. And then also people might just start be isolated from, like, socially isolated. They don't want to join like corporate events or team events. They just quit from this, right? And then there is also this aspect of career progression, when people are not volunteering for the new tasks or for leadership responsibilities whatsoever. So that could be the signs of the unstable situation, let's say.
So kind of just retreating a little bit from maybe the character they once were, retreating, not looking for more responsibilities, not looking for anything further. And these could be kind of red flags that investigate, because I think it also does cause an element of something might be happening, but it also might not be as severe for there to be a huge kind of attention to it, but they might just need some space. Because I've also had that moment before where it's just something happening at home and you just need to get on with it for 2 weeks, and then you're back to work and you're absolutely fine. But for those 2 weeks you might just be disengaged a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a huge moment into a burnout stage. It's just life, as it were. How can we then utilize that awareness? So say we've identified something could be there. What can we do? Let's call it the first steps to a wider blueprint, I'm sure, which is going to be too big to discuss in this, but maybe what are the first steps that we could take to start creating a supportive environment that creates hopefully more positive mental health for our employees?
Yeah, well, ideally would be to hire a professional who could
insert cue card here.
Exactly. Who can then strategically approach this topic, right? But without jokes, I think leaders, like, first and foremost, they need to work on themselves and on their emotional intelligence to build this trust between the employees and the between them and the employees. And when people feel psychologically safe, they also start to speak up, they behave more naturally, and they have then courage and motivation to voice their ideas or maybe concerns that they have. And managers need also to listen to these concerns, like, curiously, not necessarily taking them as complaints, but more like, okay, these are my notes, and then maybe I can improve something in this regard. Then there is also, like, could be mental check-ins, which I integrated in the one-on-ones. Of course, like, it all is related to trust. Once you build this trust, people are more open and can talk about how they feel and if there are any critical issues that they are experiencing, which needs to be fixed. One very important step, and I don't know why many people neglect this, like, not people, but many companies neglect this. This is recognition and gratitude. So this is so simple, and this is even doesn't cost anything. Just notice what your people do for your organization. Tell them how their performance helps your organization to drive forward. And this is, like, very easy. And once you start sharing this gratitude and recognition, then employees receive this feeling like, I'm capable for more and I want to do more. So that activates the dopamine, and this is responsible for motivation overall. So that could be a good step. And then there is also should be a balance between achievements and the enjoyable routine work, so to say. Because when we're only focusing on achievements and results, this is the distress zone. And then, like, if you're there for quite some time, then you're off you go to the burnout, right? And we all know what happens then within the burnout zone. Yeah, so that would be my recommendations.
I think the key element here as well, and not to oversimplify, because by any means, what you do isn't simple. There is a lot more to it. But to start the process, it doesn't cost a lot. right? Without getting somebody like a professional, but to start the process, you can start with just gratitude, as you say, then building those one-to-ones, and then building kind of a more gradual support system. And then when you get to that point, I guess kind of work, okay, how has things improved? And if things haven't improved, maybe then seek counsel from somebody who's more of a specialist in this area. But it's not like this huge project that should take months and months and months to try and carve out. It could be done in an afternoon to say, okay, let's go start doing this.
I can give you an example. So in one company I worked with, we just started with this gratitude, and we implemented the gratitude channel in our teams. And that was we started just simply like, yeah, okay, let's try it out. And then it was, at first, people were also skeptical and they were shy to share that somebody did something special. And sometimes it even doesn't need to be special, right? But then after 6 months, people were posting like, thank you for helping me with this. And thank you for implementing that. And like cross-departmental. And it also improved the entire picture of the achievements of the people. Because like me in HR department, I don't always know what the customer success people do, right? Because sometimes it's just something that is not related to my work. And that was really, really good. So that is super simple. I recommend every company has that.
Yeah, it gets everybody cheering each other. I mean, we're quite a small team, right? So there's only 5 of us.
Exactly.
And you feed off each other. When you're having a bad day, somebody else is having a good day, and you feed off that positivity, and then that's how it encourages. And when I'm having, for example, they might say, "Hey, that's a really good call," and that makes you feel excited. Okay, I'm going to go do another one, and it just keeps that going, that momentum. But yeah, you're right. Not everyone does these sorts of challenges. It can feel awkward. I get why at the beginning, and it kind of sometimes felt a little bit forced. But then you kind of just get into this rhythm of, you only really say it when you mean it as well, otherwise then it is forced. So I guess that kind of leads on slightly to my final question to you, is about ensuring that, the focus of mental health isn't just a one-time initiative. Great, we've done it, tick box, move on to the next project. Because I sometimes feel, maybe some TAs in HR might call me out on this one, I don't know, but I do sometimes feel that those in our space do projects for project work just because there's nothing else for them to do, and they want to do a project, they launch that project, and then they go thumbs up, move on to the next one, and there's no action behind it, there's no sustenance behind it. So how do we get teams looking into mental health and saying, okay, this is a consistent thing we should be looking at, not just because it's the flavor of 2024?
Well, I think, first of all, the statistics said for itself. Like, if the people are in this integration zone, they are more productive, they are less likely to quit, they are more engaged. And actually, if you look on Google, for example, they have a word there, but people are also don't quit Google or quit it rarely, right? And so basically, it's in the interest of the company to invest in it. So because, again, when people feel good, they are more likely to drive your company forward. And then your company is successful, and that's what you want, right? So every company leader wants their company to be successful. And so as I mentioned again, so there are simple steps which people can do right now already, and then there are also some tools where HR professionals can measure, like with this engagement service, for example, they can already identify some issues, and then with repeating the survey, they can also see if there is an improvement or not. So, and I think also the people departments or people professionals need to educate managers on the value which mental health, or taking care of mental health brings. So because, again, some statistics, the costs of the burnout-related turnover is more than 8,000 euro per year. So, and this is for one person.
Burnout. I was going to say for one person.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then you take all the other costs that are associated maybe with replacing that individual.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Which, I mean, numbers get flown around all the time, and I think it's difficult to pinpoint. But through the power of Excel documents, we have created a way to analyze it for companies. But so if you take that 8,000, then I'm going to say 16,000 for your one business, you're taking a look at that's the true cost to replace that individual. That's a staggering number. I didn't think it was going to be that high.
Yeah. So when I saw it, it also was a surprise for me. So because I'm also new to the topic, it just was from the personality. I was naturally taking care of people, right? And now I can also do it with data. But absolutely.
I think the biggest thing to take away, at least what I've taken away from this, is that mental health has there's a spectrum, as it were, of where you could fall into the categories of being mentally unwell whilst obviously being at work and kind of having those three pillars as, I guess, anchors. And then within those, where you could fall into that, I think it just shows how broad this topic really can be, and too much for one episode, as it were. But should somebody want to explore this further with you, should somebody want to ask you further questions, bring you on board to consult their team, where can they find you?
LinkedIn would be the best place, I think. I need to update it as well, but anyways.
What I'll do is I'll put this into the footnotes. I'll make sure that your LinkedIn is there. But Svetlana, I do really appreciate you going through this with me. Like I said, it's a completely brand new topic to me. So I do appreciate you kind of showcasing a little bit more behind the scenes, and thank you so much for joining us and for taking part in the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, and it was my pleasure.